Nvidia's RTX Spark announcement at Computex 2026 sent shockwaves through the PC industry. But the name that moved most on Monday was not Nvidia. ARM holdings surged 14% in a single session. The reason lies in how the chip business actually works. Nvidia's RTX Spark is built on ARM architecture. Every chip Nvidia ships using ARM's instruction set generates a royalty payment to Cambridge. The RTX Spark pairs an Nvidia Blackwell GPU with a Grace CPU. The Grace is ARM-designed. Jensen Huang declared this the first reinvention of the PC in 40 years. He projected the overall CPU market expanding to $200 billion. That is the market ARM licenses into. The mainstream read placed Nvidia at the center of this story, but ARM is the silent beneficiary of every Windows PC that switches to ARM architecture. Apple's transition to its own ARM-derived silicon already demonstrated the shift is structurally durable. Qualcomm's Snapdragon X has been expanding the Windows on ARM installed base. Now Nvidia is entering the same ecosystem. ARM collects royalties from Qualcomm, Apple, and under the new deal, implicitly from Nvidia. One analyst framed the RTX Spark as an iPhone-level platform shift. If that comparison is even partially accurate, ARM's royalty revenue line is at the beginning of a multi-year compounding curve, not the end. ARM also recently signaled plans to develop its own semiconductor products directly, a shift from pure IP licensing. That move is not yet revenue-generating, but it marks a strategic expansion of the addressable market. The buried assumption in the bull case, every major PC architecture shift that includes ARM automatically lifts ARM's royalty per unit. That is not guaranteed. Royalty rates are negotiated, not indexed to volume automatically. But the directional logic is sound, and no analyst quoted in the coverage disputes the direction, only the magnitude.
On the same day ARM shares moved 14%, a separate announcement dropped. ARM CEO Rene Haas is in line for a potential $800 million payout. The structure is straightforward. Share awards tied to ARM reaching a $1 trillion market capitalization by 2029. The milestones extend further, $1.25 trillion by 2030, $2 trillion by March 2031. His total remuneration for the financial year ending March already exceeded $60 million. The package would be among the largest ever associated with a UK-headquartered company. ARM's defense is direct. The company has aligned its remuneration with US technology norms, not UK corporate governance standards. With shares traded on NASDAQ and competitors headquartered in California, ARM's talent market is American. Critics see the opposite signal. A quantum this large at a moment when shares are near highs reads as peak cycle confidence. Here is what makes this analytically interesting. The $1 trillion target by 2029 is not arbitrary. At ARM's current growth trajectory and royalty leverage across the $200 billion CPU expansion Huang described, a $1 trillion valuation is plausible within that window. But the gap between plausible and priced is where the tension lives. ARM today trades at a multiple that already prices in a significant portion of that expansion. The $800 million pay plan does not create the upside. It signals that management believes it is achievable. The hidden assumption both sides share, the royalty model scales linearly with ARM-based chip shipment volume. In reality, royalty rates and licensing negotiations can compress as volumes rise and customer leverage increases. If Nvidia becomes a major ARM licensee, Nvidia's negotiating position strengthens over time. Shareholders vote on the remuneration policy at ARM's AGM later this year. That vote is now a forward checkpoint with direct price implications. A failed vote signals governance friction with the majority SoftBank holder. A passed vote locks in management's $1 trillion timeline as the public milestone the market will price against. Either outcome is observable and near-term. One detail in the coverage received less attention than the CEO pay headline. Reports surfaced that ARM Holdings may terminate a critical architectural license agreement with Qualcomm. Qualcomm currently holds an ARM architecture license, which allows it to design its own custom chips. Termination would restrict Qualcomm's ability to bring its newest processors to market. It would also create uncertainty around Qualcomm's intellectual property rights and supply chain stability. For Qualcomm, this is an existential licensing risk. For ARM, the framing inverts. The same power to terminate is also the power to renegotiate on better terms. Qualcomm's Snapdragon X Elite had been gaining ground in the Windows on ARM market. Nvidia's RTX Spark entering the same ecosystem just reduced Qualcomm's leverage at the negotiating table. Qualcomm now faces two simultaneous pressures, a direct competitive threat from Nvidia and a licensing renegotiation with ARM from a weakened position. Qualcomm shares fell 10% in pre-market trading on June 1.
That price action reflects the market's read on Qualcomm's position, but ARM's position is the opposite side of that same transaction. The second-order variable for ARM holders, if the Qualcomm dispute results in renegotiation rather than termination, ARM could extract materially higher per-unit royalties from its largest mobile licensee. If it results in termination, Qualcomm would need to migrate to standard ARM licenses, which generate royalties directly. Either path generates ARM revenue. The variable that is not yet resolved is the timeline. Qualcomm's current revenue base depends on its existing license structure. Any disruption takes quarters, not weeks, to feed through into ARM's royalty income line. The monitoring variable for this chapter is whether Qualcomm announces a license renegotiation or dispute resolution ahead of ARM's AGM. That timing alignment, the Qualcomm license question, and the CEO pay vote both sitting inside the same near-term window is where ARM holders need to focus. If both resolve in ARM's favor, the $1 trillion milestone timeline compresses. If the Qualcomm dispute drags into litigation, the timeline elongates. Neither is priced with confidence yet. That is the opening for the analysis, not in Nvidia's headline, but in the two unresolved variables Nvidia's announcement set in motion. Every day after the close, we publish a market wrap and key issue analysis. Subscribe to the channel.